Not one drop leaves Canada without our explicit permission. That was Mark Carney in Thunder Bay after banning all water exports from the Great Lakes. No consultation with Washington, no phase-in period, just a complete shutdown. The Great Lakes hold 21% of the world's surface freshwater, 6 quadrillion gallons. 40 million Americans depend on them for drinking water. $890 billion in annual economic activity relies on them. Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Buffalo. Every major American city on the lakes now operates knowing their water flows through Canadian territory. And Canada just made it clear that water stays in Canada, unless Canada decides otherwise. Trump threatened Canadian trade. He imposed tariffs. He talked about economic annexation. Carney responded by taking control of the one resource America absolutely cannot replace: water. And there's nothing Trump can do about it because you can't invade an ally over lake levels, and you can't replace water that doesn't exist anywhere else. The Great Lakes aren't just big, they're irreplaceable. Lake Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, and Ontario contain 6 quadrillion gallons of freshwater supporting 40 million people. $56 billion in agricultural production annually. $890 billion in total economic activity every year. For centuries, that abundance meant unlimited use. Cities built along the shores knowing water would never run out. Industry used Great Lakes water for manufacturing, cooling, processing, assuming supply was infinite. Nobody questioned sustainability because scarcity seemed impossible. Then climate change started dropping lake levels. Superior fell to near-record lows. Michigan Huron hit levels not seen in decades. Warmer temperatures meant less ice cover, which increased evaporation. Rainfall patterns shifted. The balance that sustained the system for thousands of years was breaking. American states facing catastrophic water shortages started looking at the Great Lakes as the solution. The Colorado River is drying up. California aquifers are depleting. Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico face collapse. Proposals emerged to pipeline Great Lakes water westward. Engineering studies showed it was feasible. The argument was simple. Water is a national resource, and Americans facing shortages deserve access to American water. Except the Great Lakes aren't just American. They're shared with Canada. And Canada was watching its own water security deteriorate while Americans planned to drain shared resources for unilateral benefit. Canada had banned bulk water exports since 1999, but the ban had massive loopholes. Bottled water didn't count. Small-scale industrial removals were permitted. If an American state wanted Great Lakes water, the ban didn't prevent it. The Great Lakes Protection Act closed every loophole. Water cannot leave the basin in any form without explicit federal and provincial approval. That includes bottled water from companies like Nestle. That includes industrial transfers. That includes any pipeline to American states outside the basin. The economic impact on the United States is catastrophic. American agriculture in Great Lakes states depends on reliable water access. Manufacturing uses lake water for steel production, food processing, everything. Energy generation relies on it for cooling. Shipping moves hundreds of billions in cargo annually. All of it now operates knowing Canada can shut off access if American policy threatens Canadian interests. Water isn't fungible. You can't replace Great Lakes water with alternatives. You can't import it at reasonable cost. You can't synthesize it. If access gets cut off, industries collapse, cities face crisis, agriculture fails. And the United States has zero ability to secure water access through force. Canada controls critical choke points where lake water flows between basins. The St. Lawrence Seaway runs entirely through Canadian territory. Niagara Falls sits on the border with Canadian control over flow rates. Lake Superior's outflows pass through Canadian jurisdiction. If Canada restricted flow, there's no military solution. You can't invade an ally over water. You can't bomb infrastructure that supplies your own cities. Trump thought agricultural tariffs gave him leverage. Carney demonstrated that Canada controls something far more valuable. Canada controls the water that feeds American cities and farms. And unlike food, water cannot be replaced, imported, or substituted. Every major American city on the lakes now operates knowing their water supply flows through Canadian territory. Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Buffalo. Millions depending on water that Canada has explicit legal authority to control. American agriculture across 8 states irrigates crops using water that originates in or flows through Canadian jurisdiction. Without it, Midwest farming faces the same catastrophic shortages hitting the Southwest. American manufacturing cannot relocate. Steel mills in Indiana and Ohio, automotive plants throughout Michigan, chemical facilities along Lake Erie, all built around water access that Canada now controls. The proposals to pipeline Great Lakes water to the Southwest weren't fantasies. Engineering firms developed detailed plans. Arizona wanted water for Phoenix and Tucson. Nevada needed supply for Las Vegas. California sought to refill depleting aquifers. The plans assumed Great Lakes water was available. Maybe expensive to transport, maybe politically difficult, but ultimately available. The Great Lakes Protection Act killed every proposal instantly. Canadian law now prohibits removing water from the basin. It doesn't matter what American states need. It doesn't matter how much they're willing to pay. The water isn't leaving Canadian jurisdiction. Western governors reacted with fury. They accused Canada of hoarding resources during a crisis. They demanded negotiations. They pressured Washington to force Canadian cooperation. Carney's response was blunt. Canada faces its own water security challenges. Canadian communities have priority over Canadian resources. American water policy failures aren't Canada's responsibility to solve. And threatening Canadian sovereignty means Canada prioritizes Canadian interests exclusively. $890 billion in annual economic activity depends on consistent water availability. Manufacturing accounts for roughly $200 billion. Agriculture generates $56 billion. All of it operates assuming water will always be available. Remove that assumption and the entire economic structure becomes uncertain. Canada isn't threatening to drain the lakes, but the legal authority exists, and American industries now face reality. Their operations depend on continued Canadian cooperation. This is leverage that cannot be countered by tariffs, trade restrictions, or military threats. If Trump escalates trade wars, Canada can tighten environmental regulations that reduce water available for American industrial use. If American states push for extraction projects, Canada can unilaterally reject them. If Washington threatens Canadian sovereignty, Carney can point to the Great Lakes and remind Trump that millions of Americans depend on water flowing through Canadian territory. Climate change is making water scarcity the defining challenge of the century. The American Southwest is collapsing. The Colorado River doesn't reach the ocean anymore. Cities built in deserts are running out of water. The Great Lakes represent the largest remaining freshwater reserve in North America. Every state facing water crisis is looking at those lakes wondering how to gain access. But Canada just demonstrated it won't yield. The export ban has overwhelming domestic support. Every province touching the Great Lakes backs it, and the legal framework is now explicit. Water stays in Canada unless Canada agrees otherwise. American states can negotiate. They can offer partnerships, infrastructure investments, shared environmental protections. What they cannot do is demand access or threaten consequences if Canada refuses. That fundamentally changes North American water politics. For generations, water was treated as abundant and accessible. Now the Great Lakes are leverage, and Canada just showed it's willing to use that leverage when American pressure threatens Canadian interests. Trump threatened Canadian trade assuming agriculture was Canada's vulnerability. He imposed tariffs expecting farmers to pressure Ottawa for concessions. He suggested economic annexation expecting Canada to have no alternatives. The Great Lakes export ban revealed his fundamental miscalculation. Canada controls resources the United States absolutely requires. American cities need Canadian water. American agriculture needs Canadian water. American industry needs Canadian water. There are no alternatives. There are no substitutes. There is no way to eliminate dependence short of abandoning the entire Great Lakes region. Trump wanted to prove American dominance. Instead, he revealed American dependence. Every city, farm, and factory along the Great Lakes now understands their water flows through Canadian territory on Canadian terms. The $890 billion Great Lakes corridor isn't locked yet, but Canada just installed the locks, handed the keys to Mark Carney, and made clear that access depends on respect for Canadian sovereignty. And there's nothing Trump can do except watch the water flow and hope Canada chooses to keep cooperating. The resource war just started, and Canada is winning because they control the one thing America cannot live without: water.